I heard them through the door, glasses clinking, someone laughing at a punchline I'd never hear. The low murmur of a party that had been happening for hours, and I was standing on the porch, holding a carved teak box my father made before he died. My grandmother's silver set inside. Wrapped in cloth, carried 11 hours across state lines. His fiancée was in the doorway. She hadn't stepped aside. She hadn't called his name. She just looked at me with this calm, managed expression and said, "Maybe we'll plan something soon," and then the door closed. I walked back to my car, sat down, didn't start the engine for a long time. Because something was shifting in my chest. Not breaking, shifting. Like a thing that had been slightly wrong for years was finally moving into its correct position. And when I did 5 days later, he never saw it coming. Because people who've been carried for long enough never do. If you've ever shown up for someone, completely consistently, without being asked, and been made to feel like the inconvenience anyway, this one's for you. Hit like before you even finish this video. And if you're new here, subscribe. I put out stories like this every week, and they don't get easier, but they do get more honest. All right, let's go back to the beginning. My name is Maya, and I want to tell you something specific about that drive. Not to set a scene, but because it matters. 11 hours, Austin to Asheville. No flights, because I'd spent the last 3 months funneling money into a credit card that wasn't mine, and I'd gotten comfortable shrinking my own budget without even noticing I was doing it. So I drove gas station coffee. The same playlist I always put on when I'm managing something emotionally that I haven't fully admitted to myself yet. On the passenger seat was a wooden box. Teak. My father carved it himself, the kind of thing that takes patience and intention. 2 things he had in abundance. Inside was my grandmother's silver set, temple lamps passed through 2 generations. I'd kept them after he passed because I was the one who kept things. I was bringing them for Rohan, my brother. We used to be the kind of close that doesn't need explaining. Growing up, we finished each other's stories. We called each other before we called anyone else. And then, somewhere in his late 20s, that started changing. Slowly enough that I kept explaining it away. He was building something. He was stressed. He was figuring out who he was without our parents hovering. I told myself the distance was temporary. The dinner was his engagement celebration. Lena, his fiancée, had arranged it at their house. Modern place. Clean lines. The kind of home that feels curated rather than lived in. I'd heard about it but never visited. I knocked. She opened the door. And before I even finished smiling, I knew something was off about the way she looked at me. Not rude. Not hostile. Assessed, like she prepared for this specific variable. "Hey," I said, "I made it for the dinner." She paused just long enough for it to be deliberate. "Oh, that was last night," she said. We kept it small, just immediate people. Here's what Lena didn't know. What almost no one knew. Rohan's Cafe, the one he'd launched 2 years earlier with so much momentum that I genuinely believed in it, had nearly collapsed twice. The first time I wired him $10,000. No contract, no repayment schedule. He said he'd pay me back when things stabilized, and I said don't worry about it because I meant it. The second time, he was 3 weeks from losing the lease on the space. A $20,000 shortfall. I moved money I'd been saving for something else. I don't even remember what anymore, and I covered it. Because it was him. Because that's what family does. And then there was the credit card. Mine. In my name. He'd asked if he could be added for business emergencies. And I'd said yes. That was 14 months before the engagement dinner. In those 14 months, I had paid off what accumulated on that card, quietly, every month, without once asking him to account for a single charge. $30,000, give or take. Not because I was naive. I want to be clear about that. Because every time I thought about addressing it, I told myself he was under pressure and that bringing it up would make me the one who made it worse. I had become so practiced at absorbing the discomfort of our dynamic that I'd stopped recognizing it as a choice. I was standing on that porch holding something irreplaceable after an 11-hour drive, and I was not immediate people. The thing about Lena's line, just immediate people, is that it was the most honest thing anyone in that situation had said to me in years. Because looking back, the pattern had been there. I just kept filing it under complicated. 8 months earlier, I'd been in Asheville for work. I texted Rohan to see if he wanted to grab dinner. He said he was swamped. Fine. Then I saw him post a story an hour later. Restaurant, candles, him and Lena and 4 other people laugh. I didn't say anything. I told myself it wasn't personal. 6 months before that, I'd helped him draft a pitch deck for a small business loan he was applying for. Spent 2 weekends on it. The loan came through. He texted me, "Got it," 3 exclamation marks and nothing else. No acknowledgement of the weekends. No thank you that felt like it cost him anything. I told myself he was just bad at expressing gratitude. And then there was a phone call, maybe a year before the trip, where I'd finally said, carefully, calmly, "Rohan, I feel like we've been drifting. I don't feel like I know what's happening in your life." And he'd gone quiet for a second and then said, "Maya, you always make everything so heavy." I didn't bring it up again. That's the thing about a slow withdrawal. It's designed, consciously or not, to make you question your own perception. Each incident, alone, is explainable. Together, they're a pattern, but you can only see the pattern from a distance. That night on the porch gave me the distance. I asked if he was home. She hesitated fraction of a second. "He's busy right now." I could hear them. Right through the door, the clink of glasses. Someone saying something and the room responding. He was 15 feet away, maybe less. He didn't come out. He did not come out. I stood there for another moment. I think part of me was waiting for the door to open. For him to appear looking sheepish, to say, "Maya, get in here, I didn't know you were coming tonight." It didn't open. She said, "Maybe we'll plan something soon." And that was it. I walked back to my car, put the box on the back seat, and sat in the driver's seat without moving for I don't know how long. The feeling wasn't grief. It was recognition. I stayed at a motel that night. Cheap place off the highway. She the kind with ice machines that rattle every 20 minutes. Around 2 a.m. I was lying on top of the covers, fully dressed, and I did what I always do. I started drafting a message that would make things easier for him. "Hey, I'm here. I know things are overwhelming. Let's just talk." I typed it out. Read it, deleted it. Because I realized I had been sending versions of that message for 3 years. I drove home the next morning. 11 hours back. Different playlist this time. I didn't want anything that reminded me of going towards something. When I got back, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in a while. I'd kept things loosely organized over the years. Not obsessively, just I'm someone who holds on to documentation. Receipts, transfer confirmations, card statements. I laid them out on the kitchen table. $10,000. First cafe bailout. $20,000. The lease. 14 months of credit card payments. $30,000 approximately. I sat with those numbers for a long time. Then I picked up my phone, called the bank, canceled the card. No message to him, no explanation. No heads up, just done. I want to be precise about what that felt like, because it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't power, it wasn't relief, it was just quiet. The specific quiet of a decision you've already made and finally acted on. I didn't send him a letter. I didn't post anything. I didn't call his fiancée or his friends or anyone in the family to explain my side. I just removed the thing that was costing me the most and waited to see how long it took for him to notice. 5 days. 5 days before he called. I knew the moment I saw his name on the screen what the call was about. I answered because I wanted to hear how he opened it. He said, "Maya, one beat. The card isn't working." Not hey. Not how are you. Not any acknowledgement of the fact that I'd driven 11 hours and sat on his porch and left without seeing his face. Just the card isn't working. I said I canceled it. Silence, and then, not immediately, but in stages, his composure started going. First confusion, then the quiet recalibration, then the frustration dressed up as logic. He said there were things pending. He said the timing was terrible. He said I should have given him notice. And then he said something that I think was the most unguarded thing he'd said to me in years. "Lena's family is watching everything right now. I can't look like I'm failing." There it was. Not cruelty. Not malice. Something almost worse. Fear. He had spent years pulling back from me, not because he didn't love me, but because standing next to me made him feel behind. Every time I'd helped him, every wire transfer, every weekend spent on his pitch deck, every month I'd quietly absorbed his credit card charges, I had, without meaning to, made the gap between us more visible to him. He wasn't using me because he was calculating. He was using me because I made it easy, and easy felt better than confronting what it meant that he needed it. That didn't make it okay, but it made it make sense. We talked for a while longer. He kept circling back to the idea that he just needed time. and I kept saying that time had passed years of it and I couldn't tell what he'd done with it. He said I didn't understand the pressure he was under. I said I understood it in detail. I'd been quietly funding my way through it alongside him. He went quiet. Then, so, that's it, I said. Yeah, I think it is. It didn't feel like a victory. It felt like putting something down that had gotten too heavy to carry without noticing, and feeling the ache in your arms for the first time now that it was gone. He called again, a few days later. Softer, no agenda, or at least less of one, I answered. I listened, ID. I didn't offer anything. No money, no plan, no version of myself that existed to stabilize his situation. I just said, I hear you. That was new for both of us. The wooden box is still in my house. I didn't give it away. I didn't do anything symbolic with it. It's just in the closet, locked, waiting for a moment that may or may not come. I started painting again, slower pace, smaller projects. For the first time in longer than I can track, my money is mine, and my weekends are mine, and I don't check my phone expecting someone to need something from me. What I know now, and what I want to leave with you, is this. Some people don't push you away because they've stopped caring. They push you away because your presence reminds them of everything they haven't become. And as long as you kept showing up and absorbing the cost of that, you made it possible for them to never reckon with it. The cruelest thing about being someone's safety net is that you can spend years being essential and still end up invisible. You were never the problem. You were the solution they didn't have the courage to refuse. I want to ask you something in the comments. Have you ever been the person who always shows up and realized, maybe too late, that the other person had quietly stopped counting on you as family and started counting on you as a resource? How did you figure it out? Tell me below. I read every single one. If this story stayed with you, hit like. It takes 2 seconds and it actually helps more than you'd think. And subscribe if you're not already here, because I've got more of these coming and the next one is even harder to sit with. I'll see you there.